Hey there, folks. Coming live from my dining room table in this frozen tundra where we turn the heat back off, but because it's going to be 77 degrees tomorrow, but it's a little bit ridiculous right now. All right, so here we go. Women and demographic change. I told you there's three things that you like to keep bringing back in this unit with population. One, how women and the fertility rate slash education slash employment of women changes everything. Two, how the Industrial Revolution was a big factor in shift of population, all that stuff. And three, animal attacks. There's nothing about women and animal attacks. I bet you can find something on it though. And please share. I'm already sharing with people what we learned about deer and all that sort of stuff. All right. So here we go. So this is these concepts basically make sense, right? And we've sort of touched upon them in previous parts of this unit. So a lot of this is just reinforcement. So one is women in education. If women have, the more education women have, the better able they are to care for their children that they have. Now, does that mean because I have two master's degree that I'm able to cook better for my children? No, I don't do that well at all. I rely on others. But it means basically that the more education you might actually learn about child care and how to do things. So this isn't talking about like college education or even necessarily high school education, right? But just programs in education in general. So if women are actually going to schools as opposed to not going to schools, that their children, they'll learn more and their children will be taken care of better. The idea that having children, that's sort of grammatically incorrect on the screen. Women are having children later in life once they're done with the education, whether that's, you can be all fancy schmancy and say, like, well, I'm going to school for a long time to become a doctor or a lawyer or something, some sort of advanced degree. So then you might not have children later, or even just going to college may as an undergrad may push you're back to your 22, 23. But even just graduating high school, right, is going to push back. Because remember, women were having children, before the age that now many women were graduating high school, and still are in some countries, right? So the idea is the longer you stay in school, the longer you're going to push back having children. Um, and some might use that education and then wait even longer. So suppose, you did become a lawyer and you want to use that law degree for a little bit before you make a family. Or even as a teacher, maybe you get a master's degree to become a teacher, and a lot of teachers are afraid to have kids before they get tenured. So, which is crazy. But, so using your education may even delay children even more. This is a chloropleth map. We see it is a global map. There's national scale with the different nations in it, and it's showing the average schooling for women. So we are in the higher end of that, and pay some attention to some of the areas that are on the lower end of that. All right, women and employment. All right, this is sort of common sense too. If a woman works, that's more money in the household. So maybe they will have a better house, or they can take care of replacing appliances, or having money to send their own children to school, or having money to go grocery shopping, right? Having money to put gas in the car. But also, more money is in the economy, whether it's then that family spending money or helping the GDP, the gross domestic product of that country. So I like to think that as a teacher, I'm not just helping students get an education, I'm helping our country's economy. All right. Most people don't think of that, right? But as a whole, that is a bit of an outcome. So having jobs will advance the country economically, right? Countries with more advanced economies have women that are working as opposed to the other or alternative. Oh, this copied. Oh, I wanted to show you. So we have this. Well, hold on. We have this graph here: female employment to population ratio. So you can see how the U.S. is high, Germany is high. Then look down: France, Chile, Mexico, Algeria over time. Just it's a pretty cool graph to look at. Um, Fairly recent. This I like to find little stories that relate from Bhutan or Lincoln Park. And well, if you want to like pause this at some other time, first there's a really cool story about a Gettysburg veteran from Bhutan. I'm going to learn more about this awesome soldier. But also, look in the middle here. Miss Sue Warren, is that anyone's relative here? Let me know. Miss Sue Warren of Oak Street has resumed her studies as senior at Panier College of Physical Education and Hygiene at East Orange. I don't think this college still exists, but I want to learn about this. Miss Warren was a correction counselor this summer at Skyland Camp, Split Rock, near here. So there you go. Um, so talking about women in 1928 going to college out of Bhutan, and it was newsworthy. But also, you know what else was newsworthy? George Sanderson of Harrison Street has purchased a new Chandler sedan. Like, you imagine getting a car and it makes the newspaper. I love if anyone knows that, or if you're related to Miss Irene Vanderhoof, about where they're spending their summers. All right. Lastly, well, almost lastly, women in access to healthcare. Um, women. This is how AP describes it: that women have unique health risks. I mean, is it that unique? We're half the population. I don't know, but they have different health risks than men have. A lot of them deal with the reproduction system and childbirth. Some of them still don't get really the attention or research they need, but just the act of this causes different concerns, or could be concerns, because childbirth can be very deadly. What I wanted to include in here, and I didn't, is rates of mortality um, dealing with childbirth, and how they're actually going increasing in some areas, how they're different by race. So maybe in class, I'll bring up some recent stories about that. But think about it. Uh, if women are dying, right, that's going to affect the size of the population, because then they can't have more children. Or if you die in childbirth, right? Like, so obviously, women just affect the population, whether they're alive or they're dead. I mean, everyone does, right? Like I said, there's a lot of just common sense to this. Countries that have um, better health care access for women, whether it's just hospitals or doctors or healthcare programs, they're going to have a lower maternal mortality rate, right? So the maternal mortality rate is just like all the other rates we know about. It's like multiplied and divided by 100, right? So the lower the rates, the better the healthcare system is. So that's why access to doctors, to healthcare facilities, to medicine, to education about that is also super important, because we don't want women dying in childbirth or really for any other unnecessary reason. And then lastly, women in contraception, another great chloropeth map that shows the TFR of women. I think we may have even looked at this unit already, right? So notice, like, sub-Saharan Africa, we see really high numbers of average child per woman, children per woman, and lower in other parts of the world. But basically, the more reliable access a woman has to contraception, that basically means the birth rate is going to drop, right? It also means it increases the woman's chances of staying in school longer, right? It also increases their chances of staying in the workforce longer. And this is just a shift in social dynamics, right? So with this, there means there's often less women at home caring for large families, more dividing the workload with smaller families in the workforce. Keep in mind, all these shifts doesn't mean they're just like, oh yay, hip hip hooray. Sometimes they're really good. Sometimes they're met with um, some criticism, right? Because there's a lot of wrestling when you change, like wrestling of ideas when you change these big dynamics, right? And keep in mind, these are for like big overall themes. That doesn't mean that some families choose to have women to stay home, or choose to have more children, or choose to start having children at a younger age. Of course, that still happens, right? But we're looking at big trends and also how society wrestles with those changing trends. All right. Sorry that there were no animal attacks. Stay warm, my friends.